Hi, this is Buzz Stone with AirWaves, episode number 20, and back by popular demand, more radio tales. This time it's High Times, the Firecracker, and Skittles. That's up next on AirWaves.
Buzz Stone's AirWaves.
Hey, this is Buzz with more radio tales, and this time it's High Times, the Firecracker, and Skittles. Now, I have to admit, in my younger days, I was somewhat of a practical joker, and all three of these stories involve me playing practical jokes on my fellow disc jockeys. So we'll start out with High Times. This was back in 1975, and the high school I went to was a very large school, and we had a radio club, and we had students in the club that would take turns doing radio shows on our school radio station. And one of the guys who was in our radio club, he was a year older than me. He got a job at a local top 40 radio station, which was number one in the market. And I'm not going to tell you what city it was, but it was the top 25 market at the time. So to get this job straight out of high school was quite an accomplishment. But he was doing the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift at this AM Top 40 station, which was the number one rated station in the market. I was a senior in high school, and I had gotten a job at a local radio station, although it was not Top 40, which was my goal. It was actually a news talk station during the day and Spanish at night. And that's another story I'll probably tell on down the line. But I was trying to break into Top 40 radio, and my friend, we'll call him Ron, who was doing 10 to 2 at night at this station, said, why don't you come up and use our production facilities, because they had state-of-the-art facilities, and you can work on putting a air check together, which was how we would apply for jobs. You had a recording of you doing an air shift. It's just the beginning of each song as you would talk up each record. And so I said, yeah, that'd be great, you know. So I would come up to the station at night, late at night, and go into the production room and work on my air check. Well, Ron, let's put it this way. Yeah, Ron was another guy who liked his weed. So what he would do, keep in mind, back in 1975, we were still playing 45 records on turntables, okay? And everything was live. And so Ron, what he would like to do is go back behind the transmitter, which was in an adjacent room, and light up a joint. But before he would leave, you know, he would have a record that was playing, and he'd have his next record queued up ready to go, so that you know, he could go back there, do his thing, and then come back and you know, and play the next record. Well, he would always put a long song on first, you know, give him plenty of time. Well, like I said, me being a practical joker, I saw an opportunity here. So one night when he went back to the transmitter room, I snuck into the control room and I turned the monitor down so that he would think when he came in the room, you know, he hears dead air, he's thinking, you know, his record's run out. So I did that, and I hid at a place where I could look through a window into the control room and to see his reaction. Well, he comes into the room and he starts frantically looking around, you know, like what's going on, and eventually he figures out that the monitor's turned down. Okay, so he's thinking, you know, I could have sworn I left that monitor up, right? But he just, I guess, assumed that he didn't. So another night, I did it again. You know, he's back smoking a joint behind a transmitter. I sneak into the control room again, turn the monitor down, and then I would again hide and watch his reaction. Well, this time he knew apparently that he couldn't have left the monitor turned down 2 times. So he comes looking for me. You know, I run back into the production room, and I'm in there, you know, making busy, and he opens in the door and he says, all right, Buzz, I know what you're up to, you know, and I'm playing dumb, you know, what, Ron, what are you talking about? And he says, yeah, I know what you're doing. You're playing a joke on me. And I said, no, I don't know. I'm not doing that. So yeah, he walks out the room, obviously thinking that I had done it. So I'm thinking to myself, well, he's on to me. I'm going to have to be a little bit more creative. So the next time he goes back behind the transmitter, I've already got a plan worked up. And back in the day, we had these things that were called carts, and they look similar to an 8-track tape, if you've seen those. And we used the carts to record commercials onto. In later years, we actually started putting the music on them as well, and then it became CDs, and yada yada. But anyway, what I did, and if you're familiar with 45s or any record, when it gets to the end of the record, the tone arm would just go back and forth like this, and it would make this sound, very distinctive. If you're a disc jockey, that's a sound you don't want to hear, because that means your record's run out and you've got dead air. So what I did was I recorded that sound onto the cart, snuck into the control room and put it in the cart machine, and put the cart machine in Audition and had it on the on-air monitors in the control room. So when he comes into the room, what he's going to hear is chick, chick, chick. And he's, automatically going to assume his record's run out. He's got dead air, which is a cardinal sin in top 40 radio. So anyway, sure enough, I'm watching, through the window at a distance to see what happens. And he comes in the room and he frantically starts looking around. And the only thing he needed to do was to go ahead and fire off that second record that he already had queued up. Well, what he didn't know at the time was that the first record had not stopped playing. He fires off the second record, so there's 2 records playing at the same time on the air. And eventually he figures out that when he fires off the second record, he's still hearing so that was his tip, something's not right here. So he eventually figures out that the air monitor is an Audition. He puts it in program. He hears the 2 records playing, and he's like, "Oh gosh," So anyway, I run back to the production room again, and he comes in there. He goes, "All right, Buzz." I says, "I know you did it this time," and I just start laughing and everything. And again, he's high as a kite. So I got to hand it to him. He took it really well, and he said, "Just don't do that again, man. That's not cool. It's not cool." And I gotta admit, it was a pretty mean trick that I played on him, but he forgave me and continued to let me use their production facilities, which was pretty big of him. So anyway, that was high times. The second story is called the Firecracker. Now this was the summer of 1979, and by this time I was program director of an AM top 40 station. It was in a small market, and back in that time we had what was called daytimers, and these were AM stations that were only allowed to broadcast during daylight hours. So in the previous radio tales I told you that AM stations, a lot of them had reduced power at night at sunset. Well, if you were a daytimer, you had to actually sign off the air, and they had what was called usually pre-sunrise authority, so we could always come on at 6 a.m. in the morning, regardless of whatever time of year it was. But of course, as the year goes on, the sun sets later and later in the day, until finally in the summer we were actually able to stay on till about 9 o'clock at night. So this was the summer. I think it was around the 4th of July. That's probably why there was a firecracker involved. And we had this guy, we'll call him W. He was our part-timer. We call it part-timer. He did weekend shifts at the station, and the only time he would work on a weekday was during the summer when we had the extended hours, because the guy that normally did the afternoon shift, in the wintertime, we actually had to sign off the air at like 5:15 in the afternoon. So as the days grew longer, we needed somebody to fill in those extra hours, so W was the guy. Well, this was on a weeknight in the summer, and me and another disc jockey, we'll call him Truckin', we snuck into the back of the station. Now, the back of the studio had a door, and that door led you into the transmitter room, which was in the back of the building. And then there was an outside door outside the transmitter. That's pretty standard configuration for AM stations back then. So Truckett and I sneak in the back door, and we come up to the door to the control room, and there was a window in the door so you could see into the control room. Well, this, the announcer, this is at his back, so he can't see what's going on. And it just so happened at the moment we got up there, W is reading some kind of copy. I think it was news. It was something long, whatever it was he was reading, and it wasn't something that was going to take a few seconds. It was like it's going to take a couple minutes to get through it. So Truckett and I had these firecrackers. And so he's reading, and we quietly, open the back door. We light a firecracker. I lit a firecracker. And I throw it. And it hits the control board, the mixer. Like, I've got a mixer here. Well, this is in front of him. And back then they were big things. It was a big rectangular metal box. It hits the front of the mixer, and it falls down on the table right there in front of the mixer. And W is reading his copy, and it's off to his right. And he immediately, of course, spots it because it's sitting there going, and what is funny is his reaction. He starts reading faster and faster and faster, trying to get through it before the firecracker goes off, and he's like this, the whole time. All of a sudden, bam! And he came out of that chair about a foot in the air and pulls his headset off and comes back down and spins around, and sees that it's us doing it. So he turned off the microphone, immediately after that, I think, and played a song or a commercial or something. But, and again, he was a good sport about it, and we're still friends to this day, and that was back in 1979, so apparently he forgave me. But that's the firecracker, okay? So finally, story number 3. This one's called Skittles. Now, this was, I believe, 1984, and again, I was program director. This time, it was a 100,000 watt FM top 40 station, or by that time we're calling it CHR, Contemporary Hit Radio. And I was a program director, but I also did the afternoon air shift. And there was a guy who came in after me. I think I did 3 to 7 was my shift, 3 to 7 p.m. And because then this guy, the disc jockey was Joe, we'll say. Joe came in at 7, and he worked from 7 to midnight. Well, Joe liked Skittles, okay? Every night that he came into work, he had a bag of Skittles in his hand. It was just the thing that he did. And the thing about this station was we had the FM station, but we also had an AM station. And you would walk in the front door of the radio station, and you're in a lobby, and you would look straight ahead, and you would see this big plate glass window, and that was the AM studio. Well, back on behind the AM studio was another smaller room, which was the newsroom, where the news guy could either do news for the AM, or he could spin his chair around and do news for the FM. So we had basically 3 rooms, and there's a plate glass window in between all of them. So we're in the FM studio all the way at the back, but you could see through the other studios all the way out to the lobby. Well, I see Joe walk in the front door, and he was notorious for getting there at the last minute. It's like 5 minutes before 7. He's supposed to come in. And so I see him walking, and there's this hallway from my right, to my right, to his left, as he's walking down. So I could see him coming down the hallway, right? Well, I don't know what came over me, but for some reason I thought, I'm going to get him tonight. And there was a fire extinguisher there in the control room, and it was a CO2 type. So, it's not the one that sprayed out the powder or anything. It was CO2, and I don't know if you've ever felt CO2, but it's cold, when it hits you. And my plan was, because as he walked down the hallway, there was a blind spot there. When he got to the end of the hallway, he had to come around a corner and come into the back of the FM studio. So there was about 4 feet of wall there where he can't see me and I can't see him, right? My plan was to take the fire extinguisher and to spray it so that it would be in front of him as he came around the corner and just scare him, right? Well, he came around that corner a little quicker than I anticipated. And I fire off the fire extinguisher and it hits him square in the chest. Well, as I told you, he always had his Skittles, right? Well, on this night, he already had his Skittles pack open. And of course, his natural reaction is he goes like this, and Skittles just go flying everywhere. And he was not happy. He was not a happy camper. And I apologized profusely. I said, Joe, I'm sorry. I explained to him I didn't mean to actually hit you in the chest with the CO2. And I said, I'm really sorry, and I said, I will buy you another bag of Skittles. And but he was upset because now he didn't have any Skittles for his show that night, and apparently that was a real downer for him. But I did, true to my word, I did buy him another pack of Skittles and give them to him. But I don't think he ever really forgave me for that. And I don't know where Joe is these days. I lost track of him after I left that station. I think maybe he might have even left before I did. It's been so long ago, I can't remember for sure. But anyway, there you have it. More of the shenanigans that go on behind the microphone at radio stations, especially top 40 radio stations. So this is Buzz. This has been episode number 20 of AirWaves. It was the second edition of Radio Tales. It was by popular demand. I had a lot of people say, Buzz, when are you going to tell some more stories? And don't worry, I've got more coming down the pipe. So stay tuned. I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already, like and share the video, and I'll see you down the dial.